Namaste and good morning everyone. Let's start our class with the prayers. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ओम शांति शांति शांति. Now Mahamrutyunjay mantra 3 times to pray for those who are in suffering. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanat Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanat Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanat Mrityormukshiyamamrutat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome everyone. We'll continue with our Gita class. So far we have seen till verse 214 of Gita, where Lord explained that to Arjuna, the contact of the sense objects with sense organs, they are of the nature of giving the pleasure and pain, heat and cold. And they also are of the nature of coming and going. And thus they are impermanent. Knowing them that as such, you endure them. Now, going forward. So we'll see first we'll chant this verse. So I'll chant it and you repeat after me. Yam hi na vyathayantyete purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhiram somrutatvaya kalpate. Now I'll chant the whole verse together and you can repeat along with me. Yam hi na vyathayantyete purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhiram somrutatvaya kalpate. We look at the grammatical analysis of different words. So let's see, it's a pronoun yam. He is indeclinable. Na is also indeclinable. Vyathayanti is a verb. Ete is pronoun. Purusham is nominal. Purusharshabha is nominal. Sama dukkha sukham nominal, dhiram nominal, sa is a pronoun, amrutatva is a nominal, kalpate is a verb. So as you know that Sanskrit sentence goes by the verb, so there are two different sentences in this from the meaning perspective. So we see this word yam, it's a accusative case, singular, gender masculine. Base word yad, so yad becomes yam and means one whom, that is because it's in the accusative. He is an indeclinable, so it means indeed or emphasis. Na means not. Vyathayanti, it's a verb. It's a present tense, lat lakara. Third person, plural, parasmaipadi, and root here is vyat and means to afflict or to cause sorrow. So this is a little bit of a special verb and this is a causative verb. So from a grammar perspective, the verb itself, vyat, means to be afflicted. In this case, it has been used in a causative sense. That means it causes the affliction. So to afflict. So something is afflicted, then it would be the regular verb. But something is afflicting, causing the affliction. So Sanskrit has a special way to form the causative verbs. So in this case, it's a causative verb, vyathayanti, and we'll see why is it causative. Ete. Ete is nominative, plural, masculine, and here the base word is etad. These, it's a plural. Purusham, it's an accusative, singular, masculine. Purusha means man or person. Purusharshabha, it's a vocative case. That means Lord is addressing Arjuna as Purusharshabha. Singular, it's a masculine, and here it is the like Rama, akaranta noun. So the base word is the same as the vocative case, and meaning is prominent among men. So Rishabha is considered somebody superior, and Purusha is the man. So Purusharshabha is a compound word. It means prominent among men. Rishabha is also used for bull, and like a bull stands out, a well-formed bull stands out in the herd of cows. So like a prominent, so in that sense also it is used, Purusharshabha, one who stands out among the men. Sama dukkha sukham, it's a accusative case, singular, masculine, and just like Ramam, Rama becomes Ramam. So sama dukkha sukha, sama dukkha sukha means same in pleasure and pain. So again, this is a compound word. Dukkha is the sorrow, Sukha is the pleasure or happiness, Dukkha is sorrow, Sama is equanimity or sameness. Maybe the English word same has come from this Sama. So same in pleasure and pain. One who is equanimous in the maintains his equanimity in pleasure and pain. Dhiram, accusative, singular, masculine, and this is Dhira, like Ramam, so it's a Dhiram. Dhira means wise or steady person. Saha, it's a nominative, singular, masculine, and here the base word is tad, means he. Amrutatvaya, it's a fourth case, like Ramaya, Amrutatvaya, so fourth case, singular. And Amrutatva, sorry, this is the gender. And it means immortality. And Kalpate is a verb. It's a lat lakara, present tense, third person, singular, Atmanepadi. And this is a little bit special root here in Sanskrit. It uses the Klut, that Lukara, the only root which has this particular letter. Out of 2000 roots, there is only one which has this letter, a special letter, Lu. It means to be fit or to be worthy, basically. So now if you look at the meaning, first we see the sentence. So one sentence is there, Saha Amrutatvaya Kalpate. He is fit for immortality. So Amrutatvaya, for to be fit, Kalpate is fit. So this is a simple sentence. He is fit for the immortality. Then who is that? Whom is Lord talking about? That he is fit for immortality. So this is described in the previous sentence, starting with yam, relative clause. So this is the relative clause and this is the independent clause or correlative clause. So one who, yam means one who, or because it's in the second case, one whom. Now in this sentence, if you look at here, this is the sentence. It has the verb virthayanti. So it's a third plural. And ete, this is nominative plural. That means this is the subject. Ete vyathayanti. These do not afflict. So that's how you understand the meaning. Look at the verb and the subject, the nominative has to match. So in this case, it's a ete vyathayanti. These do not afflict. What are these that do not afflict? So these are described in the previous verse. Matra sparshaha. This contact of sense organs with the sense objects. They are of the nature of giving heat and cold, pleasure and pain. So these things, the contact of sense organs with sense objects, they do not afflict. So that's what it would mean. Ete vyathayanti. These do not afflict. So I was telling you about that, why this is causative. So if it were for a person, literally the verb means vyat, to be afflicted. But here we are referring to these, here the subject or the karta is these matra sparsha. So it's not that they get afflicted, but they cause affliction. That's why the verb is in causative. They cause the affliction to some person. Because ete here refers to not the person, but to these sukha and dukkha, the happiness and pleasure causing contact of sense objects with sense organs. That's why the verb here is put into the causative. So these do not afflict. Whom? So one whom, whom means what? So if you look at here, accusative case, so this, these four words, they are all accusative singular. So they all refer to that object of the verb, vyathayanti. So one whom, what kind of that person? So but that man or that person, sama dukkha sukham dhiram, one who is same in pleasure and pain, one who is wise and steady. These do not afflict. Here this the not. So these contact of sense organs with the sense objects, one who is same in pleasure and pain, one who is wise, one whom they do not afflict, that person, saha amrutattvaya kalpate, he is fit for immortality. And here Arjuna is being referred to Purusharshava, prominent among men. So Arjuna, even though he is in a dejected state, he was very prominent, of course, always he was the main warrior from the Pandavas side. He was definitely a prominent person even from a worldly perspective. But here we can also understand from the perspective that when most of us, we encounter the sorrowful situation which causes the dejection or a problem for us, our natural tendency is to either do something about it, to somehow make the situation change or go away, or we ourselves try to go away from that situation. And situation is not always changeable, and then we are basically left with the sorrow and dejection. Arjuna was in a similar situation where he encountered a situation which is like war, and that to a war up till the finish. That means he understood very clearly that most of the people whom he loves, they will not be after this war. So what's the point of having this war for the sake of kingdom, where the people for whom he wants to live, he wants to enjoy the things, he wants to have all the kingdom and everything, they will not be there. But he also understood, his first instinct was to run away, that he dropped the thing and he wanted to become a beggar. He said even the life of a beggar is better. Because he understood he could not change the situation as such. But then Arjuna was also very thoughtful, very discriminating person. He did not run away. Even though he expressed that sentiment, he understood very clearly that the problem is not simply because of the situation. His problem of sorrow and dejection is much deeper roots, and it can only go away by gaining the knowledge of the truth. And for that, he surrenders to Lord Krishna. And that makes one extremely special. So prominent among men is a very appropriate way to address Arjuna here. That despite having that tendency, that emotion that I want to run away from this situation, too difficult to face. He still held on to it, and not only held on to it, he actually understood the fundamental cause and surrendered to Lord Krishna to gain the solution, so that for once and for all his sorrow is gone, not just the situation being changed. So not a temporary solution. Most of us, we always try to find some temporary solution to the situation, and that may be okay, that is not denied, but because situations are what they are, solution at the best can be temporary. So we will always be going through this ups and downs in our lives, whereas there is a way out in a nature of permanence to gain the knowledge, and that's the path Arjuna finally chose. And he was, of course, extremely lucky to have Sri Krishna, Lord Krishna, as in his front, and he surrendered to him as his guru. It's not easy to surrender to one's friend because you have a very different relationship, sort of equal. But Arjuna also had this understanding that even though Lord Krishna was his friend, he was no ordinary person. So he surrendered. So that makes him very prominent among the men. So here Lord is saying, "Oh Arjuna, one, that person who remains same in pleasure and pain, that wise and steady person, whom these do not afflict, these contact of sense organs with sense objects." So in the previous verse, Lord gave the advice that please endure them. Titikshasya. You try, because they are transitory, you endure them. So the point is, why should I endure? Why should I not keep making the change or run away from them? So he is saying that one who develops that equanimity regarding these temporary pleasure and pain arising out of the situations, arising out of the contact of the sense organs with the sense objects, that person becomes fit for gaining the immortality. A huge thing. Immortality also here it refers to the fact that his problems are over for once and for all. Arjuna, this is also relevant in the present context, because Arjuna's fundamental problem started with the thought that all these people, they will die, and because the war is taking place. So he was extremely perturbed by that. So Lord is basically referring to that person attains immortality. So he further explains the same theme. What does it mean that person attains the immortality? So we'll see the next verse. So I'll chant 1/4 of a verse at a time, and you repeat after me. Nasato vidyate bhavaha na bhavo vidyate satah ubhayorapi drushtantah tvanayostattvadarshibhihi. Now the whole verse. Nasato vidyate bhavaha na bhavo vidyate satah ubhayorapi drushtantah tvanayostattvadarshibhihi. Na is indeclinable, as you probably all know by now. Na means not. Asataha, it's a nominal. Vidyate is a verb. Bhavaha is a nominal. Na is again indeclinable. Abhavaha is a nominal. Vidyate the same thing, repeating verb. Sataha is a nominal. Ubhayo is a pronoun. Api is indeclinable. Drushtaha is nominal. Antaha is nominal. Tu is indeclinable. Anayoho, it's a pronoun. Tattvadarshibhi, it's a nominal. So na means not, it's an indeclinable. Asataha. So for those Sanskrit students who are attending the Sanskrit course, we did this last time, takaranta, sixth singular. So this is a takaranta word, sixth singular. Gender here is neuter. So sometimes this gender could be masculine or neuter. It's both ways the form is the same, and they can be used in either case. Base word here is asat. We'll explain this word more, but you can say asat means unreal. So sat is real, asat is unreal. So we'll see this word more, asat. What is asat? Vidyate, this is latlakara, third person, singular. Verb type is atmanepadi. As you can see, vidyate, like labhate, it's not like ti, so it becomes atmanepadi. Root here is vid, and the meaning is to be or to exist. Bhavaha, it's a nominative, singular, masculine. Base word here is, it's like Ramaha, akaranta noun. So this is one of the most common akaranta nouns and pronouns. They are the most common ones to occur in the literature. So bhava means existence, even though it has other meanings, but here it's existence. Na means not. Abhavaha. So we saw bhavaha here. Abhava is the opposite of it. So when you put akara before a word, many times it becomes the opposite. So we have exactly the same situation here, except here it's abhava with a, and instead of existence, it becomes non-existence. Vidyate, it is exactly the same form of the verb. Sataha. So you see asataha here. Asata is asat, unreal. Sataha, it's exactly the same form, except again, just like abhava and bhava, we had the difference of akara, the a in the beginning. Similarly, sat and asat, that's the whole difference here too. So here the word is sat, which is real. And just like we'll see the sat and asat, of course, a little bit more detail, because just saying real and unreal do not quite convey the meaning. Ubhayo, this is genitive. Dual, like Rama, Ramayoho, but this is a pronoun. It's a, again, this can be taken either as masculine or neuter. So base word is ubha, means both. Api, it's an indeclinable also. Drushtaha, this is a nominative singular, masculine, like Ramaha, Drushtaha, Akaranta noun, and Drushta, it's the base word, means seen, something which is seen. It's a participle form. So drush dhatu, it means to see. Drushta means something is seen. Antaha, nominative singular, masculine, and again this is also like Rama, Rama, Anta, Akaranta noun, and it means here we'll use the word truth, or it actually has a lot of meanings, and we'll see that. Tu is for indeed and for emphasis. Anayoho, so this is also sixth case dual, masculine, and this is a pronoun form of idam. So we already studied this in our Sanskrit classes, but just to idam means this. So anayo means these two, of these two. So this is of, it's a dual form, two of these two. So of these two. Tattvadarshi bhihi, it is like bhihi, normally when it comes at the end of the word, it's an instrumental plural in Sanskrit. So instrumental plural, and this is a different kind of base word. This is Tattvadarshi, and this is masculine. And Tattvadarshi, the see literally means seers of the truth. Tattvadarshi, it's coming from two compound word. Tattva means the truth or the essence. Darshi, it's coming from drush dhatu, to see. So seers of the truth means knowers of the truth. Here the drush dhatu is used in the sense of knowing. They are the knowers of the truth. So again, we will go by the similar logic. First check the verbs. So we have two verbs here, and if you look at, I have put the anvaya here, where one more verb which is implied but not explicitly mentioned is this, asti. So we have three sentences. So that makes it simpler to understand. So let us see the sentences. So first sentence is simple. Asat bhavaha is the nominative singular. Bhavaha na vidyate. Asataha. Asataha bhavaha na vidyate. If you just literally translate, it means unreal has no existence. Unreal has no existence. Then second sentence would be Satah. See, in the similar lines, just the words are opposite. So here it was asat, here it becomes sataha, here it was bhava, here it's abhava. Na is common in both the sentences and vidyate is common in both the sentences. So sataha abhavaha na vidyate means real has no non-existence. It seems very strange. So the translation here, it is unreal has no existence and real never ceases to be. So as we will see the meaning of these two words first, these two sentences. So it is basically what he is saying, that the something which is real. So we'll use the word sat and asat. So sat has no non-existence. You know, when it is used as a double negative, it means a very strong positive. So Sat has a no non-existence. That means Sat is always exists. And Asat, which is the opposite of it, has no existence. So two things are contrasted here. Sat, something is called Sat, that is never non-existence, means it's always existence. It can never become not existing. And there is something called Asat, which does not exist ever. Asat bhavaha na vidyate. It does not exist. So Sat always exists, and as you can see, the opposite is Asat, which kind of conveys the same meaning. It's for the emphasis. Asat never exists. Asat does not exist. So what is Sat and what is Asat? That is the question. And what do we mean by the existence? That Sat always exists. So if you look at very simply, you can also consider it the other way around. Something which always exists is called Sat. And other than that, something which does not always exist, that is called Asat. So what is it that always exists? If we look around ourselves, if we look at the world, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, which always exists. Right from our bodies to our sense organs, and this whole world, which is nothing but a perception by our sense organs. That's what gives rise to the world. There are, of course, a difference in opinion among philosophers whether the world really exists or it's only because I perceive it exists. Either way you look at it, there is nothing which I can consider as ever existing. There is nothing in my experience which is ever existing. Everything is constantly changing. And because everything is constantly changing, you cannot say that something is existing for some time also, technically. So there is a very famous saying that you cannot take a dip in the same river twice, because river is constantly flowing, even though it may look like it is the same river. And that's what generally we consider also. It's the same river. I took like in India, it's very common that I took a dip in Ganga, considered very auspicious. And even though we refer to as it is the same river in which millions of people are taking the dip, but the fact is that I cannot take dip twice in the same river. It's constantly flowing. There is a double aspect to it. It's not only that river is constantly flowing, that of course we perceive a little rather easily, that river is constantly flowing. Our body is also constantly changing. The body which took the dip previous moment is not the same body which is taking the next dip. So both are in constant flux. His body is like a river. If you look at even from the physical perspective, it is nothing but a collection of the molecules, and molecules in turn of that. So it's a collection of cells which are in turn collection of molecules, which are in turn collection of atoms. And as you probably would be knowing from the science, that no atom is ever in constant. It's always in constant changing motion. So there is nothing in this world, whatever you look at, that is not in a state of motion. That in other words, that's not in a state of change. So when something is constantly changing, it's every time changing, well, how can you say it exists? Because existence means that it has some inherent reality of its own. And that's what Lord is pointing out here. There's something which you perceive, even though it seems like existing, but if you give it a thought, you can clearly see that it does not exist. And that is what is called asat, that it has no existence. It is constantly changing. So it may appear to exist, yet it does not exist. Then what is Sat? So even though the word is Asat and Sat are used in the sense of real and unreal, they are truly speaking, cannot be opposite to each other. Simply because if Sat is always existence, existence is not in opposition to non-existence. Like two things which are existing can be opposite to each other. They can be they can cancel out each other in some cases, like hot and cold, two different perceptions. But something which existing, which is real, and something which is unreal, they truly are not like opposite to each other, even though the words kind of convey that way. So what is Sat then? If Asat is something that I always perceive and experience, everything that is Asat, then what is Sat? So that requires some thought, of course. There's something which it does not change. And what is it that never changes? So the one who is perceiving all the changes, that entity has to be unchangeable. Otherwise, you cannot perceive the change. You can only perceive the change if the person who is perceiving, the perceiver itself has to be constant. Perceiver has to exist. In order to decide that other things are asat, the perceiver has to be sat. And this is our experience also. I remain the same person. I always have this constant feeling that I do not change. I am the same. Therefore, if I show you a photograph of yourself, which is like a 5-year-old boy or girl, and if I ask you who is this, and you will say it's me, what is in me there now? The body is changed many times over. The mind is no longer the same. The memory is not the same. The experiences are not the same. Everything has changed, yet it is me. That me, that unchangeable reality, that is real, that always exists. So, Sat always exists. So it's a kind of interesting wording here. The Asat has Asat has no existence, and Sat has no non-existence. Like you can never experience your own non-existence. That is impossible. In order to experience your own non-existence, you must exist. So from that perspective, it can never be non-existent. It is impossible for a person to perceive one's own non-existence. Then is the next sentence he is saying here. Ubhayorapi drushtontah tvanayos tattvadarshibhihi. So this is like a single sentence. So here if you look at ubhayoho and anayoho, these are genitive dual masculine. even though one word could have been conveyed the same meaning of these two both, but either you can say it's a poetic thing or for the emphasis purpose. So between these two, between what to do to the Sat and Asat, between these two, or among these two, between, I mean, in the matter of these two things. The truth of these two things is seen by the seers of the truth. So Tattvadarshi. So Tattvadarshi is somebody who has a very clear understanding, like when you see something, then we say Pratyaksha, I have seen it. There is no doubt about it. It's not just merely hearing. So in that sense, okay, one has heard, but one has so clearly perceived that there is absolutely no doubt about it. That is what is referred to the Tattvadarshi. Tattva means, so Tattva is an interesting word. This Twa is a suffix in Sanskrit, which is translated roughly to as like ness in English. So goodness, for example. So Tattva in that sense. So Tat means that. So Tattva means literally means thatness. So that here refers to that Sat or that ultimate reality. So Tattva refers to the truth. And Darshan, as I told you, it is the seers of the truth. So of these two, the truth, so Anta is the, normally we use the word Anta as end, like end of something. So here it is used in the sense of ultimate truth. Like the one Tattvadarshi is the one who has absolutely no doubt about remaining about this truth. He has seen till the very end of that ultimate truth. So Lord is saying that these two statements which he is making, that Sat has no non-existence and Asat has no existence. The truth of these two statements is indeed seen as such, the ultimate truth of these by the seers of the truth. So it is not just a matter of logical reasoning. It's a matter that you can perceive as clearly, or just like you will perceive anything in the world, but even more clearly, because here we are referring to something which exists, which is real, unlike the things in the world which have the nature of constant change and flux. So this is a verse which is very popular, and here Lord is giving sense of the reality in a very clear terms to Arjuna, that this is the reality, and this has been seen as such by the people who persevere for seeing the truth. They have seen it as such, that Sat has no non-existence, it is ever existing, and Asat never exists. Then the question may arise, then if Asat never exists, it is true, it is constantly changing. From that perspective, I say that it never exists. Yet it seems to be existing. It seems to be very real. The computer I am using, internet connection I am using, and you are able to hear, seems very real. So what is it? So the example is given that, as I said, it's not like opposite to each other. So a table made of wood, essence of the table is wood. So a table is nothing but the wood in a particular name and form. So in this relative example, we can say wood is Sat and the table is Asat, because the form of the table is constantly changing. It has come into being at a certain point of time, and it will be gone at a certain point of time. Even when it is appears to be existing in the middle, it is indeed in a constant state of change. So between the coming into being, or we call it birth, or going from the being, we call it death, there seems to be this existence, but even that part is constantly changing. So in that sense, it is called asat. So asat, there are two ways asat is used in Sanskrit, in philosophical literature. One which never exists. So examples of that are given, something like a flower growing in the sky, a horn on the head of a rabbit. So there are some examples which are given like that, which simply never exist. It's just a word. It doesn't have any corresponding object. So that is one way the asat is used. Another way it is used is for mithya, what we call this temporary or relative existence. The table exists. It is useful. I perceive its existence. Yet it has no real existence. Its existence is only dependent upon the wood. So it has no independent existence. So you can understand the sat which exists independently and asat which has the dependent existence. Because of it being dependent, essentially only sat exists, asat does not. Just like table is nothing but wood. You touch the table, you are touching the wood. You smell the table, you are smelling the wood. But yet it has a name and form, and that's all it is. So it has no inherent existence, it has no inherent reality. In that sense, it is used asat for the word, or it's also used mithya sometimes. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on this topic with you, and then I'll just take the questions if you have any questions. So there is a question here. When do we use dative case? Amrutatvaya. So in this verse, we have used Amrutatvaya, that is for. So dative case is used normally in the sense of for. So for immortality. He is fit for immortality. In that sense, it is used. The question here is the Sanskrit verse, it says bhavo, not bhavaha. So here bhavo and here it's bhavaha. So this is the sandhi clearly. Bhavaha becomes bhavo. Those who have studying Sanskrit classes, they would know that bhava becomes bhavo before the certain consonants and vowels. There is those lines 9 to 16 into 16 verse are pure poetry to me, at least divine poetry. Yes, indeed, it is a divine poetry. That is very well said. There is a comment, divine explanation too. I do not know about my explanation. I have some things that I'm just sharing my understanding. I mean, there are a lot of teachers and commentators who have given a beautiful commentaries on these verses, and Gita has attracted thousands and thousands of such people, great people who have given the commentaries on those. Okay, there is a question here that we have learned 3 words that mean to be: Vrut, Vad, and Bhava. Can you explain when each of them is used? Sanskrit course. Okay, we'll use it. They will just remind me. We can discuss it in our Sanskrit class. These 3 verbs. So there is a comment, beautifully explained. Thank you so much, Sanchitama. Dhiram also means tolerance. So dhiram, there is a question. Does dhiram also mean tolerance? So we had the word dhiram here. It means wise and steady. Tolerance is titiksha. So to endure, this verb titikshasva, that means to endure. So dhira is the one who is able to endure, who is able to maintain his sense of stability, sense of equanimity without getting too much bogged down by the changes happening around him. So one who can endure, one who maintains the stability, that is dhira. So dhira is a noun, dhiram, it's a noun. Titiksha, the verb, that is tolerance. There is a question, would it be wrong to pronounce bhavo then? Bhavo, or then it would be okay, bhavo, bhava. So, okay, so I think the question was here, bhavaha, bhavo. So why did we pronounce bhavaha here? Even though when chanting the verse, it says bhavo, but we chanted bhavaha. That is because I explained once earlier in the class that when you chant the end of the quarter, you split the sandhi. So even though it's written bhavo, because as per the sandhi rule, but when we are chanting and that happens to be the end of the quarter verse, then you split the sandhi and chant. So in Roman script, I have shown the way you will chant. And generally in the text, that's how it's written, bhavo. So it's just a matter of people who know grammar, they automatically understand that when to chant bhavaha. So they automatically split the sandhi and chant bhavaha. So this is just a convention for chanting. Generally, that's what I have seen. The question is it wrong to pronounce bhavo? So this is a different style of chanting. I won't say it's wrong, but generally in Gita particularly, I have noticed people have chanting as bhavaha, like after splitting the sandhi rather than with the sandhi. But one could potentially chant with the sandhi. It may not be considered necessarily wrong, but that's how generally it is followed. There's a comment here, very nice commentary of Sat and Asat. Thank you so much. So there is a comment here, nicely explained, Swamiji. In our satsang class, we always use clay and pot. So that is true. Clay and pot is a very stock example in Sanskrit to explain the Sat and Asat, clay and clay pot. So in Sanskrit, that is called ghata and mrutrika. Nowadays, most people do not use clay pot, so I just was with the wood, so I give the table example of table and wood. But it's a very common example to use the clay and pot. So there's a comment, love the way I explained this verse. Thank you, Adriana. Atman, the immortal self, is the ultimate truth, the essence that never changes in eternity. Same those who can always identify themselves with Atman. True. There is a question here, 3 types of existence: independent, dependent, and non-existence. Here Sat refers to the independent, dependent existence. Yes. Thank you, Salil Baba. Yes, that is true. There is a question here. Last week's and this week's verse have so much meaning. Thank you for explaining this so well and how it relates to our life. I see that many of those words are repeated in chapter 12 and other chapters also. So that is true that in Bhagavad Gita, there is a lot of concepts which are repeated. And yet, if you try to understand with this way, the way grammatical and with the context, you can see those subtle differences also. So one example I'll give you. This 215, it has sama, dukkha, sukham, equanimity, same in pleasure and pain. That means a person equanimity. Now this is a theme in Gita which has been repeated again and again, this equanimity. Samatvam yoga uchyate, verse 248, that this equanimity indeed is called yoga. This concept of equanimity among the changing circumstances, that is one theme in Gita which is very frequently referred to. And many masters, they have pointed out that it is so critical, so central to message of Gita. Some people have written their commentary itself as samatha yoga, like the yoga of equanimity. That is the message of Gita. But yet there is a difference in how this equanimity is attained by a person of knowledge, jnani, by a person yogi, the meditator, by a karma yogi, by the person who is taking the karma as yoga, and by a devotee. There is a subtle difference, even though this equanimity is attained by all those people. So as we come across, we can see those subtle differences, but it always helps when you see the little bit deep understanding of the words and the connection with the previous verses. Otherwise, when you read Gita, many times it feels that there is no connection between the previous and subsequent verses, which is not true. It's a dialogue, and it's in the form of questions and answers. And that way you will understand that when Arjuna asks a question, what prompts his question? Many times it's not very clear to us if you just simply read the Gita translation, that what is prompting his question, Arjuna's question. But then we'll see if we can make some sense out of those. So thank you, Shri Manima, for your comment. There is a comment here. I like the explanation about how body changes, but me, the observer, does not change. I was connecting to more to all this dream of Brahman, hence non-existence, and Brahman is real. So this is of course, a very huge topic, Brahman and Vedanta, the whole science of Vedanta. Here, Lord is not referring to Brahman. If you look at this word so far, it will come in Gita later on. But right now, he is talking in a very specific sense related to Arjuna, which is very relevant to Arjuna right now. Even though there are some philosophical terms, but he's talking in something which can be immediately perceived by Arjuna to be truth. So he has not used, as we can see, any much of a technical terms here. So his teachings are very simple right now, yet they are very profound. So thank you so much. Thank you everybody for participating in the class. We'll conclude with the prayer. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all.